While some may say it may be the most wonderful time of the year, Yankees fans are saying, just do something. I hope there's something under the tree or the menorah or whatever it may be, because right now the Yankees have been idle for the most part. And it went from the most wonderful time of the year for lots of blue and white fans to the most anxious time of the year. And so to ring it in to pretty much depictions of Yankee led anxiety will bring you through what has happened since we last got together, which hasn't been a lot, spoiler here, and what, of course, the Yankees can do and maybe will do from here. But of course, thank you for joining us for another edition of Bomber Boys. It's been some time and, of course, some change for Justin and myself, but we are back, 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 back. And so, of course, Justin, I have to ask you, as always, my friend, how are you? Happy holidays.
Well, happy holidays to you. Merry Christmas coming up in the next week. It's kind of like a Christmas gift to our listeners that we're back. I thought we were going to wait till the new year. I woke up to a text from you asking what time I go to work today. I told you not till the evening, and you're like, let's record. And I was like, I'm down. Of course I'm down. Now, the Yankees haven't done much, but a lot has happened with us. I think we could tell stories on stories about our own personal lives. I don't know if that would interest the crowd as much as the Yankee talk would interest the crowd, but it has certainly been a while. Good to be back, doing good today. I will say, you started with the whole holly jolly stuff, happy holidays. The other day when we did Locks and Long Shots, our college football podcast, I was really in the spirit. I'm not so much in the spirit anymore. Not just because I'm waiting for the Yankees to do stuff, but I was riding around yesterday evening in my new town here in Connecticut, and it just feels like the cheer is missing. There's not a lot of holiday lights up. There's not, a bunch of blow ups or, lights on trees and houses. It just doesn't feel like everyone's buying in. And it's weird because we've had an early winter. I know you wouldn't know down in Arkansas, but we've had an early winter. There's snow on the ground here. And maybe that's why I don't see all the decorations because, they might be off or under some snow. There's not much left at this point, but it just feels like I had the holiday cheer. I tried to spread it, and it's just not working. Not enough people are getting on. I might even be working the holiday, right? And I still had holiday cheer over the weekend, but everyone else's energy about the holidays is starting to bring me down, and I really don't like it because Christmas time is the best time of the year. I've always said that. It's the one time I listen to music, and I haven't listened to music the last couple days, mainly because I really haven't had to because I've been at home. I've had off the last couple days, but the simple matter of fact is I am doing well. I'm not happy with how other people are treating the holidays. I am ready to talk about the Yankees. Dylan, how are you doing on this? I don't even know what day of the week it is. Wednesday? Thursday?
Thursday. Good try, though,
Thursday.
buddy. That was an elongated answer from you to basically just
That's
say
my
you're feeling,
specialty.
feeling the exact same way I am, which is bah humbug. For me, it could be because there is no snow on the ground, but as we both know, I'm not mad about that, unlike you. 63 degrees here right now is what it is in North Little Rock, Arkansas. That is a fitting place to quickly start. We have talked about this on the Catskill Sports Report with Dylan Price, where, of course, Justin's been my guest ample times in the time since we've done this show. And, of course, a little bit on Locks and Long Shots. But if you can't tell by our backgrounds, and if you're listening on Spotify, spoilers, mine now finally has better lighting. And Justin is in a room that I still don't think's been decorated, and he's lived there a month plus at this point. But Justin and I both moving the exact same day, starting new jobs the exact same Monday, and doing so, again, just because everything in our life has to go in line with one another in new cities and new places. Justin has stayed relatively close to New York, not to steal your thunder, but he is working for the worldwide leader in sports, and he's out there in Connecticut. I'm down here, as I mentioned, in Little Rock, Arkansas, and it has been a ton of fun. I've seen not a lot of rocks. I know, Justin, that was going to
Any
be your
boulders?
question. No boulders, not a lot of rocks, to be honest with you. This is called the natural state, though, and I will tell you it is rather beautiful. I live right on the river, which is certainly pretty nice, and I'm working for KARK4 and Fox 16 out here, the NBC and Fox affiliate. So we've both had a lot of fun, heck of a lot of stories over our first couple months in the new digs, but we have not talked Yankees in that time.
Wait, I thought you were going to give me a floor before turning to the Yankees. I have decorations, but they're on the wall I'm looking at. which makes it seem like there's nothing behind me. Also, there was a dresser here, but they finally took back the wrong one and I got the new one. But I used my mom's help to, reorganize my room because I really don't really care what it looks like necessarily. And
Mhm.
we put the dresser in the corner over here. So this is plain right now. I'm working on it. I have some stuff to hang, but I also have to go home and get some more stuff to hang. And I don't want to hang what I have until I get the rest of it so I can match it up right. But I will tell you, this room has decorations. The other rooms in my house, apartment, have zero decorations. I'm plain and simple. I don't have much decorating power. Everything is sports too. If I look at the wall, I've got Knicks, Penn State, the Sanford Mainers, the Islanders, James Franklin, and Saquon Barkley. And honestly, I like it that way. But I do have a couple decorations. I know yours are more visible than mine, but I'm working on it slowly and steadily. And by the time I do, my lease might be up, and we'll have to see if I stay here or not.
I got a lot of mementos behind me. A big Aaron Judge jersey framed hanging over my couch right now that I got for my birthday. I've celebrated one. You've got one coming up in short order here. And of course, we have the holidays coming up and we have the Pinstripe Bowl coming up, which is come at the worst time in both of our lives where it seems like both of us will be either working or not even remotely close to New York City on the day of the game. But of course, our favorite college football team, our alma mater, will be playing in Yankee Stadium in the Boogie Down. So I guess we can quickly start there before we get into the Yankees because this won't take very long. Penn State playing Clemson. This is a matchup of the would have been, could have been, should have been national title game. But of course, it'll happen about a month or so before the actual national title game because both these teams inevitably ended up not exactly performing up to expectations this year. One will be without its head coach they began the season with an interim head coach who will finish his tenure, with the new head coach likely roaming the sidelines. And the other one refuses to use NIL because the only NIL he uses, he said, is God. His all-time infamous quote from Dabo Swinney, who has in fact walked that back and started to say he's going to use the NIL. But it's definitely two clashes of styles. It's definitely going to be, we would have been treated to a Cade Klubnik, Drew Aller potential matchup of two guys in that top of their class. Aller, of course, season-ending injury, pretty much since the last time we were on this program. And then, of course, you got to talk about Cade Klubnik not necessarily reaching expectations this year after a stellar playoff run a year ago. Two former playoff teams, two could have been playoff teams. I'll just ask you, your prediction, who walks away with, I guess, the bad boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl trophy?
I hope it's a lawnmower. I know they have lawnmowers on the sidelines. I've been to the Pinstripe Bowl several times. That being said, I remember when Virginia Tech played in this game right after Brent Pry became their head coach after firing Justin Fuentes a couple years ago. And as Brent Pry was being interviewed on the ESPN broadcast, Virginia Tech let up a huge touchdown. I'm hoping that doesn't happen when they interview, assuming they interview Matt Campbell this year. I'm hoping that's not what happens. I'm hoping Penn State doesn't allow a big play, a big touchdown. And honestly, with the changes they've made lately, they haven't been allowing those big plays unless you're the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. That being said, you asked for it quick. Penn State has 4 opt-outs right now, and Clemson has 27, whether that be due to injuries, transferring, NFL draft, whatever the case is. That screams right now that Penn State's going to win. Now, there's still plenty of time for Penn State to deal with a couple more opt-outs, and we've seen in the past where these players practice like they're going to play and then they just don't play in the game to keep their health strong, and it depends on the weather conditions and all that. Terry Smith, the interim, said yesterday, or this morning actually, I think, that it's a day-to-day is how they're taking it with all their players. But right now, 4 opt-outs plus I think 2 transfers, one of which didn't really play. So they're missing five contributors for this bowl game. And I think that right now is screaming that Penn State's going to win. Still 9 days till the game. Things can change. But right now I've got Penn State and I've got them by probably 10 plus points.
I tend to agree with you. I think this team for Clemson's been gutted by, of course, opt-outs and whatever it may be. I do think there's more to come for Penn State, as you mentioned. It's day by day. But at this point in time, I think Penn State performed well towards the tail end of the year. Better, you could make the case, than Clemson towards the tail end of the year. And I think this is a roster that to be honest, you have a Clemson team that is kind of just viewing this year as a wash. And for Penn State and a lot of their players that are not heading to the NFL draft or not coming to the end of their tenure, this is their last shot to prove that they either one, want to remain a Nittany Lion, and if they want to audition for Matt Campbell, those would be a hell of a way to do it. And then two, for some of them, it's putting tape for other schools. So I just think it's one of those things. There's more on the line, and I think all these guys have rallied behind Terry Smith all these last stretch of the season, and I think you're going to see that same kind of atmosphere and kind of same energy. I think they're going to want to go out on a win after an ugly year, a mess of a year, and honestly, I think for Terry Smith, they're going to want to go out on a win. And I'll say one more thing. I think when we look back at these last 2 years of Penn State football in about a decade, we're not really going to remember I think we'll remember the Rose Bowl, a game against Utah, of course, the big win for that end of that era, Clifford's walk-off, the end of that era as a whole. I don't think we're going to really remember the Peach Bowl, sadly, because we were both there and it was a great game and it was a lot of fun.
Well, that's why I'll remember it, because we went there. I couldn't tell you the score right now.
But I think
it
the
was
seasons,
33-14 or something.
we will remember will be the highs of that playoff wins run, what could have been the near national title game, and then the lows of this season, and then kind of picking it back up at the end. And if they can polish it off with a bowl win, I think we'll remember fondly this little blimp of an era of Terry Smith, kind of the way Larry Johnson and some of those, Spider or Tom Bradley and then Spider Caldwell, that era of, post Paterno in the interim. Like, I think the way that was remembered fondly, despite it being ugly, is going to be, and to a lesser extent, how people think of this Terry Smith era, where it was a smack in the mouth. It was your expectations at a high coming down to a low, but then rallying to kind of create something unique and fun at the end of the year where they played for a coach, just like they did back in the day.
And I think the thing about Penn State is we stick with the people that actually pour themselves into this university. We stick with the people that bleed blue and white. I've got blue and white on right now. I mean, my closet is blue and white through and through, basically. And the simple matter of fact is Terry Smith bleeds blue and white. And I think that to us is going to be something that we remember. How he poured his heart and soul into this 6 weeks or 6 games, 7 game span in which he took over a team that was championship bound preseason wise and fell apart. A team that lost its starting quarterback to injury, that lost its 12-year head coach because he was fired. And I think we'll appreciate what James did down in a decade too, but I think what Terry Smith has done, even if it's just half a year, is something us Nittany Lions will take with us forever, just because it showed what a university could be when everyone's on the same page, when everyone's rooting for the same thing to happen. It's been a couple of, up and down years with ebbs and flows with Franklin, where half the stadium's chanting for him to be fired. I mean, even with Sean Clifford, half the stadium every week was screaming for him to be benched. This span of games has been the most unified Penn State has been in a while, right? Since probably they came out of the Paterno era and everyone came together to rally behind that group of players. And it's nowhere near that same level, but it is nice to see. It's refreshing to see. And the hope is that it goes into the next era, the Matt Campbell era, with that forward momentum of let's all unite, blue and white through and through. Next year might be a bad year. Penn State has 6 recruits right now in their transfer class or in their high school class. You don't know how many transfers are coming. You don't know how many guys are leaving. Next year might be rough, but stick with Matt Campbell through and through. Stick with all the players that are going to put on the Nittany Lion uniform. Stick with those guys that could have left to the transfer portal, just like we did this year with guys like Denai and Drew and Katron and Nick, who all could have been in the NFL, but they all came back. And I think what you said is, right on the head, is that we're going to remember this, whether we want to or not, because I don't think anyone signed up for this at the beginning of the year. This is certainly what could be a turning point for Penn State to move forward, unified as one. And I'm still not sure that we've seen the end of Terry Smith as Penn State's head coach. I've said this on Locks and Long Shots. I've said this to you personally. I've written it in the group chat, and I've put it out on Twitter. Matt Campbell gets NFL interest year in and year out. And I know he doesn't really want to move his family again, but he's on the East Coast. He was, up for the Jets job a couple of years ago. This is a guy that could move up to the NFL. And there's a reason Pat Kraft signed Terry Smith to the biggest non-coordinator assistant coach contract in college football right now. and they're making him the associate or assistant head coach, whatever the exact title is. I think he's the next man up if Matt Campbell takes off. If Matt Campbell doesn't take off, then, this all goes beyond the point. But if Matt Campbell takes off for the NFL at some point, which I wouldn't be surprised if he does, then Terry Smith, I think, gets another shot, and a long-term shot, not just a couple game span.
Well, breaking news while we're on the program, and it's a good transition into baseball. The Renegade, David Bednar, has committed to Team USA, according to, USA Baseball. So another Yankee will be on Team USA. But yes, of course, we'll round down the Penn State news because it wasn't exactly earth-shattering news, and I probably got your hopes up for a second. For that, I apologize. But yeah, I think we'll look back fondly on this era.
You had me thinking Bellinger was signing.
But as you mentioned, I think there's always the chance that Terry's there waiting in the wings. If there ever is a chance Matt Campbell bolt. But we're excited about the Campbell hire. You can hear more of our thoughts on that, of course, on the Locks and Long Shots podcast, as well as our breakdown of every single college football bowl game. That was one of the two of us' idea on this podcast, and it ultimately aged into one of the worst Sunday mornings I think I've had in some time, of just being straight up bored out of my mind, as were you, as were we all, as we got to the point of
I'm never bored when I got the mic in front of me.
Predicting two teams most of the time that we had no real recollection of what they've done this year or what they were about. But for the most part,
did you watch the 68 Ventures Bowl last night? It was a very good game. Came down to the final play.
Justin, you cannot tell me you weren't bored when we were getting to points where somebody would rattle off a bowl name, and quite literally, I would know the teams, know the names, wouldn't know what they did this year, would have no idea if that was a real bowl game or not. I think we added 3 of them. I don't think half of these games were real. But anyways, I digress. A lot of chaos in the college football world, and of course the college football playoff beginning tomorrow with Alabama and Oklahoma. But again, Bednar into Team USA in the World Baseball Classic. This is why we don't let me host. I have the ADHD and the attention span.
We're 16 minutes and 46 seconds in, and we've touched on our moves and Penn State on a Yankee podcast, and we're on a time crunch because someone's got to go to work.
I have the attention span of a goldfish, folks. David Bednar going to the World Baseball Classic. He'll be in the bullpen next year, even if 2 of his former running mates will not be. So I think it's the perfect place to start before we get into what they've retained, what the Yankees have lost thus far. And it's kind of a fitting time to do what we call, I know I'm throwing you off here, but judgmental Justin versus positive Price. One move that we both kind of expected but didn't expect. I know you were banging the drum for a potential of his return, but Devin Williams has bolted to Queens to join the New York Mets. I'll give the floor to you, Justin, because I know you were pretty positive on bringing him back. Thoughts on Devin Williams heading to Queens?
Yeah, this is a guy that had an up and down first year in Pinstripes. It never seemed like he was fully a fit here. Obviously, you take it back to the beard policy changing, whether or not he was the cause of that. He certainly played a factor in it. He may not have been the direct cause, but he may have been a factor in it. Then he, struggles to start the year, gets hot in the middle of the year, struggles again, but he was a force to be reckoned with down the stretch. And I think that's where I looked at it, and maybe it was a recency bias, through some recency glasses, and said, Williams overall, if you look at his year, you look at his ERA, it wasn't great. You look at some of the other stats, it wasn't great. But when you needed him most, in the postseason, down the stretch trying to get into the postseason, Devin Williams answered the call, and he was more than willing, it sounded like, to come back. The simple matter of fact, I like to say that now that I think about it. I say that term or phrase a lot. Anyway, the simple matter of fact is that Devin Williams, he outpriced himself for the Yankees, and I think they made the right move not bringing him back. But certainly, when you look at it, it would not have been a negative to bring Devin Williams back. This is a guy that's a year removed from being the best closer in the National League, a couple years removed from I believe it was a 62 save season, whatnot, with Milwaukee, whatever the case was. He never got that high. It was 40 in 2023, whatever. You get the point. This is a guy that's had, a good reputation except for this past year. And, they worked on some things. He wasn't calling the pitches to begin the year. Then he started calling his own pitches. He got better. They took it away from him, I think, at the end of the year, and he kind of fell off again before, in the playoffs. I'm pretty sure he was calling his own pitches again. This whole back and forth, whatever the case is, he answered the call. He wouldn't have been a downgrade from what you have in the bullpen, but certainly outpricing himself. I can't blame Brian Cashman for not wanting to commit that much money to him, but it does hurt because you look at this bullpen now, and we'll talk about another piece momentarily, and you're like, who is actually going to step up? Obviously, you just mentioned David Bednar, but outside of him, there's not much. And that's what the concern here is, and that's why I would have liked to bring back one of these two. And I think Williams had the better, stronger end of the year. So recency-wise, I would have picked Williams over the other guy, who we'll get to in a second.
And how about that for a Mets team that was kind of reeling after the loss of Edwin Diaz to answer back and grab two of the Yankees' top arms from their bullpen, deplete your crosstown rival. Again, we'll talk about the other guy in just a moment here, but getting Williams, I mean, in all likelihood, with how Weaver performed in the tail end of the season, how Williams performed, Williams likely slots in as your closer, and at least in heading into spring training, and he'll probably have to fully earn the job against his former and now again current teammate in Luke Weaver. But Devin Williams, like you said, it was an ugly start to the year. Both of us kind of campaigning for maybe a Williams AAA stint, a phantom IL stint, something to get his head back on right. But as you mentioned, once things got comfortable, once he was calling games, once he was doing what he felt, I think, was best for one of the top closers in baseball, one of the top pitchers in baseball, felt like he was back on track. And we saw some of the best Devin Williams had to offer towards the tail end of the year. It's a trade that aged poorly holistically, but it's a season and a run for the Yankees with Devin Williams in particular that went down and then back up and a little down, whatever at the end. But I think as a whole, Devin Williams towards the tail end of the year proved to be one of the most reliable arms at a time others were falling off, which brings to the point the other guy that the New York Mets were able to acquire from the New York Yankees via free agency. Luke Weaver, Dreamweaver, will no longer blare in Yankee Stadium. I'm very sad about it, simply on a vibes, content, and I love the song perspective, but on a legitimate baseball perspective, both you and I have thoughts on it, and that's where we get to the actual judgmental Justin versus positive Price. So, of course, judgmental Justin, we'll begin with you. This one was one, unlike Devin Williams, you were a little bit more apprehensive on his retention.
Yeah, I mean, you had a 9.64 ERA in the month of September. That speaks volumes to where you were at. And you also think, we all talk about the Matt Blake pitching factory, which I think took a big step back this past year when you look at it. But he's able to find guys that don't look, good or appealing to other teams and turn them into gems. And Luke Weaver was that guy. But these guys also only have a short lifespan of being a gem. And I think Luke Weaver is just the latest guy. I love Luke Weaver. Don't get me wrong. His run in, the playoffs when the Yankees went to the World Series in 2024 was incredible. Answering the call time and time again for the New York Yankees and being a big reason they got there when Clay Holmes got demoted out of the closer role and into more of the seventh inning guy, and Weaver was going 8-9 almost every playoff game. That's beside the point at this point, because you have to look at what he did most recently. And he is a guy that, started out the year hot. Then he got injured that really threw his season for a loop, got hot again after the injury, but then fell off in September and wasn't great in the playoffs. And it became the Luke Weaver that the other teams he was on at other points, they saw. Right? We hadn't seen that Luke Weaver in pinstripes, and down the stretch towards the end of his Yankee tenure, which we didn't know was going to be the end of his Yankee tenure. We assumed it, but we didn't think it. We weren't seeing the Luke Weaver that had a 4.95 ERA in St. Louis in 2018, the 6.58 ERA when he went 1-9 with Arizona, and the guy that struggled with Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Seattle before he came to New York and got moved to the bullpen, and it fixed his entire career. It's just, there's a lifespan on pitchers, and there's especially a lifespan on pitchers who, kind of started their career okay, went downhill, and then found, lightning in a bottle. And I think the lifespan of Luke Weaver being that guy came to an end, at least in Pinstripes. He might turn it around with a new pitching coach, feeding him new information with the New York Mets. And, maybe they're not as analytically based as the New York Yankees, who their entire franchise is analytically based. So for me, it's just not that big of a loss. 2 years, $22 million. Could the Yankees have matched it easily? I think if they were in $2 million range, like 2-year, $20 million, he probably comes back, maybe even a little bit lower, but he stays in New York, which I think is the toughest part about all this. But at the end of the day, if you're penny pinching, which apparently the Yankees are, and we'll get to that a little bit later, if you're penny pinching, it doesn't make sense to bring him back with the way his last season went. And I think that's just the way Brian Cashman looked at it. Apparently the Yankees weren't even in the bidding. I disagree on that part, but they weren't in the bidding, and the Mets come away with a third Yankee closer on their roster now. Heard someone say that apparently they're looking into bringing Mariano Rivera back. So we'll have to see if the Mets get Mo or if he stays retired. But certainly, Luke Weaver, great times coming over. Glad he was able to turn his career around and make himself into something. Grateful for what he could do in that World Series run. But it was, I think, time for an ending, and hopefully the Yankees can find his, contributions from someone else. And I guess a cheaper version of Luke Weaver, because everything's about penny pinching for one of the richest organizations in sports.
Yeah, so I vehemently disagree with your take. I personally have been pretty steadfast in my Luke Weaver support. I do think that, again, comes back to the fact that he clearly meshes well with the locker room. He's clearly been a vibes guy, and somebody who also selfishly creates really funny and hysterical content on social media with the Yankees team. And I think they're going to miss him very, very badly. But when it comes to the realistic on-field perspective, I think there's something to be said. We've said this for some time. It has been our longstanding tradition, and it's perfect for Christmas time of the year. This has been our longstanding tradition as far back as this show really dates, more so with Matt Blake's tenure with the team. Matt Blake has a knack for finding misfit toys in the bargain bin of the store and turning them into quality pieces that you use, but more often, it's a one-off. It's a one-season thing. It's this guy was great. We turned him around, and then he bottomed out at the end of the year. Let's just move off. Let's get the next guy from the bargain bin. There was something tangible that they got out of Luke Weaver. It was the end of that September run where he positioned himself as a starter and a candidate heading into spring training. And then it was the transition into the bullpen where Luke Weaver in that World Series run does not, I think with how Clay Holmes had been all across that tail end of the season, the Yankees don't get to that point without Luke Weaver clutching up and becoming, it felt like another variation of those Yankee good or great closers in the postseason. I think back to the Mowers, but also a more realistic comparison. I think back to a David Robertson type, where it felt like the Yankees had kind of gotten their second heir to maybe not in that great tier, but a really, really solid guy who loved being a New York Yankee, brought the energy and brought the consistency on the bump. And then I think something happened this year, and I think it's been widely reported by Brian Hoke and a few other reporters that they kind of took the autonomy away from Luke Weaver that he had certainly earned for his performance. Weaver was one of the most dominant relievers at the start of the year, but because of injury and whatever else kind of came up, the pitch selection and the Yankees getting a little bit more hands-on with Luke Weaver, I think after how well he performed, was unjust, and I think ultimately caused Luke Weaver to kind of barrel out and become kind of a shell of himself towards the tail end of the year. And I don't think he was 100% healthy either. And I think you and I both speculated it, that Luke Weaver, I think the wear and tear of the amount of innings the Yankees had run him for over the past, 2.5 seasons, I think it come to kind of a little bit more under the microscope. But I think the reality of it was that if you're not letting a guy who had very clearly succeeded and was on a roll and proving himself to be maybe a mainstay of the bullpen, have autonomy over his own decision-making with his pitches because you think that you know better, or you think you know better for his health, maybe, whatever it may be, then you can't be surprised by the outcome of him bottoming out and having a bad tail end of the season. Because to go back to the Devin Williams point, to bring both of our points full circle, you did the same thing with Devin Williams. You gave him a little bit more decision-making ability, and all of a sudden, the last airbender came back in the Bronx. So I think for me, it just comes down to, if they'd stop meddling so much, I think the Yankees would be a lot more successful with their pitchers, because Matt Blake has produced in turning guys around. But just because you've produced and turned these guys around doesn't mean you need to continue to be hands-on and poking and prodding within their kind of, I don't want to say development, but more so revitalization feels like the better word. And for a guy like Luke Weaver, who clearly had no shortage of confidence and no shortage of good decision-making, I don't understand why you suddenly had to feel like you had to get your hands in the mix and get your hands on what Weaver was doing, because it was clearly working when he was on. Now, of course, again, whether it was that or whether it was injury, we will never probably truly know. But it felt like Luke Weaver was not the same Luke Weaver, and both of those are more realistic reasons. But if you remember back to that run, and if you remember back to how vital Luke Weaver was at the start of the season, too, in that pen, when Devin Williams was so erratic, I just feel like it's unfair to look at this and go, it's okay. It's an affordable loss. It's something we can come back from. And you do have the way to cushion it. Again, to bring it back to our entire point where we finally started talking Yankees today, you still have David Bednar. You still have Camilo Duvall. Both of them are controlled. You also have Jake Bird somewhere in Scranton. I hear he's in the tunnels somewhere, hanging out, getting ready, and maybe with beard, without beard for next season, whatever it may be. And then you did bring back Tim Hill, and you have Ryan Yarbrough, who feels like he could be the next in line to be your next kind of Luke Weaver type. But it just feels like Justin.
Hey, wait. Don't forget about Cade Winquist. It's the guy they selected in the Rule 5 draft. That means he has to be on the major league roster unless they
Matt Blake probably has seen something in. So
yeah,
I don't not trust Matt Blake at this point. He's certainly proven that he can get a lot out of a little, but it's just, to me, a source of frustration when you've gotten a lot out of a little and it's fizzled out in the past. But for Luke Weaver, when you didn't have your grubby hands in there getting in the mix and deciding what pitches he's going to throw, elsewise was probably your most consistent pitcher in the last 2 years out of the bullpen. So for me, it was definitely a source of frustration and sadness to see him go on a personal level. And so that's why, for me, I was a little bit more positive on the status of Luke Weaver. And for me, I guess in turn, where you're more positive about the outcome, to kind of do a double negative here, I'm more negative about where the Yankees bullpen goes from here, because Cade Winquist, if that's how you say his last name, Tim Hill, Ryan Yarbrough, they're not moving the needle for me as much as Luke Weaver was with his consistency.
Well, I'm the same way. I'm still negative about the bullpen aspect of this and what the team looks like. Yeah, well, that's true. But I'm still negative about that. It's just a matter of, here's what I think we're missing, and we can, kind of translate this until the entire offseason is, there was a report that the Yankees and Hal Steinbrenner want to stay under $300 million. And first of all, I question why. The Dodgers are not staying under $300 million. The Mets aren't staying under $300 million. If you want to compete, you have to spend more than $300 million. You also have mega contracts: Garrett Cole, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Max Fried, guys that I'm not even naming right now. You made a mistake, and you have to own it, that you offered Trent Grisham the qualifying offer, hoping he would decline it, you get a draft pick, and he'd go elsewhere. But he accepted it. So now you have his $22 million on the books that you didn't expect. And right now, when you look at every move the Yankees make, you have to look at it from that perspective. If they're going to penny pinch, it doesn't make sense for them to give Luke Weaver $11 million a year. It doesn't make sense for them to give Devin Williams whatever his annual contract comes out to be. It just doesn't make sense. Now, if the Yankees weren't penny pitching, which should be the rightful thing that the New York Yankees do, which is spend money, then yeah, you give $22 million to Luke Weaver, and you give, I think it was like $14 million a year, don't quote me on that, to Devin Williams. You give that money to them. But in a penny pinching era, whatever reason it is, you have to take that into account. And that's why I'm more like, okay, he's gone for $11 million. I don't like the fact that, he's been the most consistent and you let him walk without even making an offer. But clearly there's something behind the scenes. And I know it's been refuted by Cashman saying we haven't been told the number. Look, I trust these reporters that cover the Yankees. They get big followings. They're not going to put out information unless it's reputable. And, they made Cashman talk about it, and he didn't sound convincing to me that he's not going to have to try to stay under 300 at least. And of course, you could always call up Hal and be like, look, Belly wants to come back and this big name wants to come. Let's go over 300. We win the World Series. You make up your losses, right? I think just the matter of adding all that stuff in here is what makes this so, for me, I was negative for him returning, but positive kind of on him just leaving, right? And I think that's the way I have to look at it, which I think is more in depth than I want to look at it. I'd love to look at it surface level, but I think you got to take into account that. But for Bednar, Doval, who struggled since coming over, Tim Hill, Fernando Cruz, Brent Hedrick, Ryan Yarbrough, and potentially this Cade Winquist guy to be your bullpen next year at this moment in time, you're screwed. That bullpen isn't winning you games. That bullpen's losing you more games than they win. And I think, you'd have to rely on your starters. But we don't know what Garrett Cole is going to be when he returns or when he returns. Carlos Rodon's out to start the year. Clark Schmidt's out. You're thin at pitching. And maybe you should have opened up your paycheck or your checkbook and given Luke Weaver some extra money. But that's just, it's not a positive outlook. But I think it's more so about the potential salary cap that the Yankees have on themselves for no reason whatsoever.
Doing a little digging on this Cade Winquist, who the Yankees, by actually technicality, and not even by technicality, he is the only actual acquisition the Yankees have brought in thus far this offseason. Winquist was a guy that Brian Hoke reported about a week ago. He said, according to Assistant General Manager Michael Fishman, he had been on the Yankees' radar since the 2022 draft. He's likely to compete for a bullpen spot. He's got big velocity. Fishman said he has characteristics that our pitching group is good at working with. We'll get him with our pitching department, make a few tweaks. He's somebody who hopefully can help us. That is about as fitting of a Matt Blake breakdown I've ever heard.
Dylan, This guy is technically guaranteed a spot on the roster unless the Yankees return him to, where'd he come from? The Cardinals?
Yes.
Guess what level he got up to this year?
Well, because I looked at Baseball Reference, I'll let you just share it with everybody.
He got up to AA, but pitched majority at high A. And he was a starter, not a bullpen.
You're banking on the same thing as I think this goes back to the Fernando de la Cruz, acquisition of a guy who had a high strikeout rate.
At least he had been to the majors, though.
But true, but you were looking at a guy who had a high strikeout rate, and you were saying, okay, he's high strikeout rate, high velocity. Let's see. It's kind of like the girls and the guys who have a toxic ex, and they go, no, we can fix them. That's how the Yankees are with pitchers as of late, with those kind of guys with higher ERAs. And listen, it worked out pretty well with Fernando. Now the problem is that, as you mentioned, his struggles were in AA with a sub-5 ERA that was hanging, very big emphasis on the sub-5 there. So I do think there's worry in that regard, but he's 25 years old. High-velocity arms don't come around every time, even though they do feel like they do. But in the Yankees' eyes, they're a dime a dozen, so might as well try to shoot for the stars with him. But anyways, that's where we stand.
Last point on these relievers. Can we have a conversation about the New York Yankees being in Queens? Because that's what this is again. The Mets just continue to take everyone that has an ounce of success with the Yankees and head them over to the Queens. And to be real, they don't do well. There's a list that's going around, Nick Tyrell on Twitter. Devin Williams, Luke Weaver, Juan Soto, Frankie Montas, Luis Severino, Harrison Bader, Adam Ottavino, Gary Sanchez, Clay Holmes. I mean, those are just the last couple years. This list is expansive well beyond that. I understand these players, can only accept what offers they have, and they probably don't want to move apartments or houses or move their families. But it's getting ridiculous how many Yankees just go across town to the Mets. And I don't know if this is more of a Met problem or more of a Yankee problem for not competing with the own team in their league. I don't want to go, I guess, too far into the weeds because I know we're strapped for time, but it's getting out of hand. Something's got to change. Either the Yankees got to work to keep these guys or the Mets got to start looking elsewhere, because the simple matter of fact, as I'll say it again, simple matter of fact here is Most of these Yankees that have gone to Queens have not done well in Queens. So I'm just saying maybe the Mets should look elsewhere because they continue to struggle. That's just my last point.
Well, we've talked about the bullpen, and I know we can break down more acquisitions that they could get, maybe, but the reality is they made 2 big trades at the deadline, so it doesn't look like they will go swinging for the fences. But they have retained some talent. And so before we talk about their sitting on their hands to end the program, because that'll be the longest portion of our program today, they did retain some of their own. Let's give them a round of applause. Justin, I don't see you round of applauding. Okay.
They don't deserve a round of applause. Look at the guys they brought back. They don't deserve a round of applause for bringing these guys back.
Right. Ahmed Rosario is back. One person that we both are rather excited about. 30-year-old, 1 year, $2.5 million. Really no real risk to this. He can platoon at second, third. It's a lefty lineup, and this is a guy who mashes lefties. So it's kind of a need as your lefty killer niche guy, and a guy who, I mean, he has a 794 OPS versus left-hand pitchers since 2021. It's a need in the lineup. Reality is that you sign him on a low-risk deal like that, you expect him to ride the pine and probably play 60 games, but we all know better than anybody that the Yankees will end up trotting him out there in 120 games. So I think it's a low-risk, really high-reward move, and I think it's something that the Yankees really kind of hit a home run on. And then I also agree that Tim Hill being added in, I think, is good because, again, low risk guy who I think you just kind of keep in the fold. And I think there isn't a lot of harm that can come from that. And again, same with Ryan Yarborough, who was pretty solid. He tweaked his changeup, they said, had a high strikeout rate. He was solid as a starter. I think he's one of those guys, I kind of alluded to it, you could convert into a Luke Weaver type and put him on the back end, and he could buy you some valuable innings. So again, another 2 additions to the pen that I think were low risk, just like Cade Winquist, who I think could add some value in the long run. But the move that I think we both have questioned heavily is, and I understand it, in the justification of you think you're putting that out there so that somebody is going to outbid you and you're going to get a compensation pick. The reality is that giving Trent Grisham a qualifying offer, you priced yourself out of his market. And Trent Grisham went, you're going to offer me 15? You're going to offer me 14? Gotcha. Yanks are offering me 22. And I know it was kind of just a, here it is, layup. They don't want me to take it, but I'd be an idiot not to take it, right? I'd be an idiot not to take it. So Trent Grisham took it because he's not an idiot. He's a very smart guy. And his market didn't exactly develop as anticipated. And he saw 22 million. And if his agent said, best I'm going to get you is probably 16 or 18, he was like, yeah, I'll take 22. Don't have to relocate myself. I play for a fan base that mostly likes me. It's a win. Now, Yankees fans have certainly not agreed on that. And I know you've been even more animated than I have on it. I feel like in a lot of ways, this shoots them in the foot in the long run. You tend to agree, but I know you're a little bit more passionate about it. So, Justin, Trent Grisham's back. Big Sleep's back. Thoughts?
Dylan, you did a story yesterday about the lotto.
I did.
A lot of the folks you interviewed are talking about what they might win or what they might buy with the winnings if they happen to win. Well, guess what? The probability of them winning is very low, next to 0 to be exact. I don't know the exact probability of winning the lotto, but I know it's very, very low and basically 0. The Yankees kind of tried to play the lotto here, with the winnings being a comp pick, not being a World Series, not being something huge, a comp pick. Remember how the Yankees have drafted recently and developed horribly. They've been awful at developing their own personal talent or homegrown talent. And if you want to go on Twitter and, tell me that Wells, Volpe, Judge, congratulations. Go look at the bigger picture and how many guys have actually bottomed out and how many, guys that everyone was high on bottomed out and their value went down to 0 when you could have traded them earlier. Whatever. The Yankees gambled for a comp pick and instead got stuck with $22 million for Trent Grisham. 34 home runs. That's great. Congrats, Trent. You hit 232 in what's supposed to be your career year. He had a down year in center field. Let's remember that. Not enough people talk about that. He's great defensively. He really wasn't as great defensively this year. And I bring up one other stat. This is really my first stat I'm bringing up for him. Dylan, I'm going to give you two stats. A slash line of 182, 303, and 348. Or a slash line of 204, 279, and 290. I know neither are great. Which slash line you taking?
Sorry, say that one more time.
A slash line that includes a 182 batting average, 303 on base percentage, and 348 slugging.
Yeah, I'm going to take that one.
All right. Well, I wouldn't take that one. That is Trent Grisham's numbers against lefties. The other slash line I gave you, which had a lower on base percentage and lower slugging, is Jason Dominguez. Significantly younger, just needs a chance to prove himself. And guess what the Yankees aren't doing? Allowing him to do that. And I know what you're saying, Dylan. On base percentage more important than batting average. I still value batting average. I do. And I know nobody does, but I do. So give me a break here. And Dominguez isn't supposed to be a slugger. He's supposed to be a guy that gets on base. He's a five-tool player who you continue to bury. Do I need to name the names? Do I need to list Miguel Andujar? And do I need to list Chance Adams? And do I need to list Davy Garcia and Frazier? I don't even know what first name he goes by anymore. Jackson? It was Clint. It was Clint.
I think
Frazier.
It's Jackson, but I think
it's Jackson. Who knows? Do you need another failed experiment on one of your highly regarded top prospects? You don't. But now you bring back Trent. You're supposedly still in the market for Cody Bellinger. I doubt it at this point. But if Trent and Cody Bellinger and Aaron Judge make up your outfield, where's Jason Dominguez? Oh, on the bench? Yes. Good job. Good job. Good job. Let's let a 25-year-old, not even 25. What is Jason Dominguez is 23 years old? He was born in 2003, so he's our age, basically. You're going to let him rot away on a bench? If not, you're going to send him to AAA. That's not a confidence boost whatsoever. That's just a way to shoot the guy down. And what are you going to do? Trade him? Good. You finally got a prospect you think can be something, and let's trade him. Great job. And let's trade him not even while his value is at his highest like it was 2 years ago before his injury. What are you doing? Stop valuing a 34 home run guy. And really, you weren't even valuing him. You were valuing the comp pick you get out of him. Why? Over a guy that's supposed to be the next Mike Trout at some point. He was said to be a five-tool player just like Trout. Sure, it hasn't worked out great yet. He hit 257. He had a good year. Everyone makes up this bull crap that he had a horrible year, that he's a pathetic outfielder. He's not. He's a young guy that they moved from center field to left field, and he struggled in left field. Tell me the last time somebody didn't struggle in left field at Yankee Stadium. Cody Bellinger, great. He shouldn't struggle with the money he's making. You continue to put your organization steps backwards each time you make stupid decisions like these. And it's another failed example. Everyone's like, oh, you're eating up too much money. No, you're blocking Jason Dominguez. And if you don't value Dominguez as an organization, then you're blocking Spencer Jones, who I don't have high hopes for. I have higher hopes for Jason Dominguez. Your outfield next year should be Dominguez, Bellinger, and Judge. Instead, it might be Grisham, Judge, and Jones. I don't know what they're doing here. They don't value Jason Dominguez. They valued a comp pick that might not even be a first-round comp pick. It might not be that great of a comp pick. For what? I think it was supposed to be a fourth-round comp pick. For what? The chance of, hitting, the nail on the head? Good try. They haven't done that in years in the draft. It's just ridiculous. And now you eat up money that could affect how you get Cody Bellinger. It's affecting your bullpen. You didn't want to pay Weaver or Williams, which I don't know if they would have paid him anyway, but you're just setting yourself back. And you block Jones, who at this point, Jones is either the major leagues or he's going to be in flux like Oswald Peraza for years. Like, I just don't understand the concept of roster construction for this team. I said it a couple years ago, and nothing changes. This is a team that's held together by Elmer's glue. And each time they make decisions like this, it only fixates that quote even more. Like, you're trusting a guy who had a flash in the pan year. And when he fails, probably this year, I hope he doesn't. I'm not rooting for him to fail. But statistically and historically, guys that have years like this don't normally come back and have another solid year right after it if it's, out of nowhere. So I just don't understand why you play that risk. You weren't going to win the lottery with a comp pick. And that's what Cashman did, and it bit him in the ass, and now he's got to adjust. And clearly, I mean, the market's been relatively dead, but clearly he hasn't adjusted properly, and he hasn't fixed any of the issues he created. Last point here, Trent Grisham is a lefty. You know how the whole talk was that we need to get less left-handed. Cashman said it last week. Need to get less left-handed. And you go and offer a lefty $22 million after a career year. He's not going to say no to that offer. You played with fire. You got burnt. And you're not fixing it. And now it's going to cost you probably Cody Bellinger. And I hope people realize that, because I don't think enough people are realizing that this move directly affects what they're going to pay Cody Bellinger. And Cody Bellinger will probably put on pinstripes, but they'll probably be the orange and blue in Queens, and he'll go play with Juan Soto.
It's not even that. You just have to think about that, because that's obviously the big effect. But it's the other thing that you mentioned in the heart of your rant there that I don't think people consider at all when they share even a little bit of tangible excitement about this acquisition or reacquisition, is that, oh, well, Trent was solid last year. He can be the fourth outfielder. Well, if you retain Cody Bellinger, first off, you're putting a lot of money into that outfield. And second, you're doing it when you have a guy in Jason Dominguez who, as you mentioned, was a 5-tool prospect who you've treated like he's got one tool and it's a broken hammer, because that's simply how Jason Dominguez has been treated since he got a sniff of the majors. He was electric for 6 games, was great, got hurt, and it felt like this organization moved on from him. Now, in the same breath, you can have Anthony Volpe barely go over the Mendoza line, and it's, well, he's a New York boy, he's a Jersey boy, he's a Yankee fan. Listen, I love Anthony Volpe, we both do, but the same way this organization puts some players on pedestals, they fail to do the same thing with guys who have actually proven it at pretty much every level he's been at and been uber consistent, and yet you haven't given him his lion's share of opportunity yet. I think they've pretty much treated him exactly like all those players you mentioned. And if you are admitting that he is going to have a role next year, then essentially you pretty much sat on your hands, because maybe they're going to say, and this is, of course, how Cashman will spin zone it, well, we feel like with the production we got from Grisham, we can spend less money and put that money elsewhere. First off, you haven't done that. You've shown no indication you're going to do that. The winter meetings have come and gone and you didn't do it. So if that's what your narrative is going to be, and you do end up playing Dominguez because Jones isn't ready, which I think, even though I am more high on Jones than you are, I don't think he's fully ready yet. So then your outfield is then going to be Judge, Grisham, and Dominguez, and you're going to have to justify Cody Bellinger playing in Queens and them starting to have some success with a lot of your former players that you couldn't afford because you thought Grisham would be the less expensive option. I can tell you right now, the gap's not going to be that apparent, and this was a move that was asinine. It was a move that clearly burnt this team, and it's a move that I think is DJ LeMahieu 2.0. And it was kind of one of those things where we were so excited for Grisham to have this success, because it was one of those go off, do this somewhere else, get your bag, we root for it, and thank you for what you did in your time as a Yankee, because you were vital to this team and this run this year. But a flash in the pan doesn't always mean there's a fire. And in this case, it was pretty apparent that, at least in my eyes, this was a career or a contract year flash in the pan, a career year that was pretty much more so to get him more money on the market next year, and because he had more opportunity than he's had. I don't think this lasts, and if it does, I think you and I will both eat our words happily, but this feels more like a LeMahieu blocking guys because you can't move past one good season than it is and because it's what the fans you thought would want. I don't know. I don't know how you justify this. I'm sure Cashman will find a way to when they lose out on Bellinger, but we kind of, I guess, can go from there to here of, these are the moves they've made. This is who they've lost. Where are we at on the pinstripe panic meter as we are past the winter meetings? We're heading towards the holidays. January has been a big month for them in the past. They've made moves. They've re-signed guys, added guys in the past. But it feels like this year more than ever, after a lackluster end of the season, losing to division rivals who end up winning the pennant, feels like they need to make some moves, and they should have already made some. And when you bring in Cade Winquist, a 25-year-old AA pitcher, and just re-signed 3 guys on low risk, high reward deals and 1 guy on a high risk, low reward deal, it feels like this is a Yankees team that has fallen short thus far. That's a little tip of where my panic meter is going to be. Yet how I am talking, I think still is going to pale in comparison to what you're about to come out with. So what's your panic meter at, pal?
Well, it's high. It is incredibly
Really?
high. I'm going to go over an 8. I'm going to give it like, I don't know, an 8.8, 8.9. And I know, the offseason is young, but it's really not. You're kind of in the middle of it right now. It always slows down around the holidays. From probably what's today? Today's the 18th. So really from like the 21st to the 1st, we won't hear anything from the MLB or any of these guys signing. It's natural. Go spend time with your families. Like, it's just, my panic comes from the fact that 2 years ago you were in the World Series and your roster has only gotten worse each year. Like we talked last year, I was, plan 1B, right? You and I had that fight about Soto leaving and how I, appreciated that they went out and got Bellinger, got Max Fried. They added some small things to help out. At the end of the day, the opening day roster, I think, was still worse than 2024. And 2025 came. They had what we all thought was going to be a good deadline, but it wasn't enough at the deadline. And now you compare the 2024, 2025, and 2026 opening day rosters, and obviously the 2026 roster better not be done. But the 2026 opening day roster has more holes than 2024, 2025, and you just continue to get further and further away from the World Series while teams around you get better. Baltimore had a bad year, and they went and signed Pete Alonso, and they have said they are going to be consistent in the starting pitching market. And they are going to fight, because that's where their problem was, the starting pitchers. They're going to fight to get that figured out and to make their team competitive again. Boston got Sonny Gray. Like, they've made moves that actually have names to them. Go ask a guy in, San Francisco if he knows who Cade Winquist is, does he know what Ahmed Rosario could provide for a team? No. You still have a struggling offensive third baseman in Ryan McMahon. Volpe's injured, so you don't know what it's going to look like for him. Second base, right now it's Jazz. I don't know if it's Jazz opening day. Ben Rice, good at first base. Love that move, keeping him there. Your catching situation is still screwed beyond belief. Your outfield is worse. Your bullpen is worse, and half your rotation is injured. I mean, there's no positive that I can find. You got who? Aaron Judge? Well, Aaron Judge, let's not forget, is coming off of an injury. And we don't know to the extent of which it actually was. Giancarlo Stanton missed over half of last year, but was great down the stretch. You hope he can do that again. But what if he runs into the same issue? That's not an issue that just goes away overnight. It just feels that this team is so much worse, steps behind where they should be. And there is so much to do. And realistically, in so little time, pitchers and catchers are going to be reporting in like 2 months from today. So if you're Brian Cashman, you better be working the phones and you better be expending every single potential option. Call up all other 29 teams, call up every free agent that looks, appetizing, and figure something out. Because I'll say it right now, I'm pretty confident in it. This team will not be past the ALDS if they go into opening day with this roster. And I think, honestly, this team is a team that might touch 85 wins at this point with how they look. That's how bad this looks. They got to figure something out.
Let's reiterate that one more time. Where's your panic meter at?
8.8, 8.9. So I might as well just round it up and say 9.
For the first time in a long, long time.
Is yours worse than mine?
I'm going to go 9.4.
There you go.
I just think we have never been led. Not never. We have not been led. I'm going to choose my words very carefully and as articulate in a way I can, as something I don't ever normally do. I don't think we have been led by previous off seasons from this management team to believe they're going to make the right decision this offseason. And if our early indication is any reading of the tea leaves of what this offseason is going to be, I don't necessarily tend to think this Yankees squad is going to be competing for American League pennant next year. In fact, I think they're going to be closer to missing the postseason. One thing I think people fail to remember that I think is lost in the sauce of a crazy Blue Jays run is this is a Yankees offense that scored more runs than any team in the American League last year. This is a Yankees offense that was spectacular while still missing their MVP for a nice run in the heart of the postseason race. This is a Yankees team that went through Cody Bellinger slumps, went through the June swoon, the July swoon, the worst run we've seen of Yankees baseball in some time, and yet still came out on the other end to produce one of the most productive offensive outputs we have seen in recent memory from the Bronx Bombers. And now we're going to let one guy walk, who is pretty pivotal to that. And I don't know if you have picked up on it at this point, Justin, and I know you have. We both like Aaron Judge a lot. But we also are both realists and know he's not getting any younger. You blew your first shot of having your long-term running mate with him, and that really wasn't any fault of your own other than the fact that Giancarlo Stanton just tends to get injured. And you invested a lot of money in an injury-ridden product. At the same time, when he's been healthy in these last 2 years, he's been exceptional and he's been as advertised. So I think I'll leave Giancarlo out of this. What I'm really going to say, and where my 9-4 comes from, is that when you lose Juan Soto, there is zero indication that you have put any value, at least in getting a high-profile running mate for Aaron Judge. Cody Bellinger was a compensation, a kind of your, okay, we can reconcile with this loss kind of move, but it was, all right, we'll go with him and then Max Fried and then whatever else we can get. Congratulations, you've built a starting rotation that, even with injuries, should be one of the best in baseball next year. Yet your offense was one of the best in baseball last year, and you decided to more than likely let Bellinger walk and keep the guy who had the flash in the pan year instead. Now, again, I hope to eat my words, and I know you do as well. But letting Cody walk, and I know we're acting as if that's a sure thing, just feels like one of the dumbest moves the Yankees have made in recent memory on the heels of getting into a bidding war with David Stearns in that front office and losing. And so to me, you lost to Uncle Steve once. You're probably going to lose to him again. When is it going to be enough? When is enough going to be enough for the Yankees to stop feeling like the little brother in January? And so to me, I'm panicked more so because if you lose Cody Bellinger, you're backfilling with a guy who you've clearly shown you don't have confidence in, and a veteran piece, and then a guy who has been injured. So, yeah, I'm going to go 9-4.
Look, I'm all for it. I tried to play it a little nicer, but I'm panicked. I'm not liking it. I have this to play a quick game. Let's compare opening day lineup 2025 to opening day lineup as is right now. At catcher, it was Wells last year. It was Wells. It's going to be, at this point, Wells this year. It's not an upgrade, and it might not even just be an even there. That might be a downgrade with how bad Wells was last year. We'll call it even for now, if you agree.
Sure.
Rice at first base, you had Paul Goldschmidt at first base last year. I think defensively you downgrade, offensively you upgrade, so I'm going to say that's an upgrade at first. You agree?
Sure. I'll go a more convincing sure on that one.
Jazz will stick at even. I'm not convinced he's going to be here opening day, but that would actually help the Yankees, I think. Caballero is the starting shortstop. It was Anthony Volpe. Not really a great comparison here. Even, I guess.
I'd take Caballero, and then I'm going to duck.
All right, we'll go slight upgrade. I'm not against it.
But Volpe, I think, it's splitting hairs.
McMahon versus Oswaldo Cabrera at third base.
I'm going to take McMahon.
I would call it even.
We can call it even. Cabrera, before he got hurt, was producing at a higher clip than McMahon did in his back end of the season for the Yankees. So if we want to call it like that, we can go even. Judge
obviously stays even, might be a downgrade depending on how his injury is. Stanton stays even at DH. Grisham in center field. Technically, he didn't start in center. He came off the bench on opening day. Grisham is a downgrade from the starting center fielder, which was Cody Bellinger. And then left field is going to be Dominguez or Jones. It was Dominguez on opening day. I guess you call it even. And then what? the bench this year right now is Cabrera and Rosario. You don't have a backup catcher. You don't have a backup outfielder, because if you call up Spencer Jones, he can't be a backup, and Jason Dominguez can't be a backup either. These guys aren't backups, and that's a simple point to make. So if you look at it, we have more stay evens and downgrades, I think, than we do upgrades. And I mean, that's all you need to know going into this year, is that this team looks worse. And we didn't even touch on the, going through pitcher by pitcher, but we've already said that's a downgrade. So what can you expect from a team that struggled its way into the playoffs, struggled through May, June, July, got hot, I guess, at the right time, made the playoffs. Their offense was great. Dylan said it. You had one of the best offenses and you lost one of the key pieces. I just don't see this going well for the Yankees. I don't know.
I don't either. I think you made a pretty good case, and I think it's kind of where we're at. So I think we take the panic meter down, because I got to go to work at some point. And we simply ask the question, you have 3 moves. I mean, outside of re-signing Cody Bellinger, and I think it might be more exciting to talk about this in a world in which they don't, for the sake of conversation. Give me 2-3 guys you want the New York Yankees to sign, come away with, trade for, that you could walk away and go, yeah, this wasn't a great offseason, but my 9-4 and my 8 round to a 9, as you did, we can walk away and go, hey, I'm down to a 4-5 heading into the season, and I feel at least a little bit more confident that this team could be back to where they were, if not better. Which, by the way, should have been the goal anyways, to get better, not back to where we were. But given the reacquisition of a piece and the loss of some others, I think the new goal needs to be that.
So Bellinger, we're already putting in there. So you need a right-handed catcher.
Yeah.
Right-handed catcher. I don't even know who you go after. I don't know what the market looks like. I'm going to say Realmuto. I don't think it's a realistic option, but you got to go find a right-handed catcher for the sake of not taking up a bunch of time seeking one. Let's go JT Realmuto there. I think the other move, and I'll kind of combine them, is if you need to get less left-handed and you're not going to pay Jazz next offseason, you might as well get some value for Jazz Chisholm and trade him. And I think in return from the trade, you seek bullpen arms. You might seek a backup outfielder as a throw-in piece, kind of like Grisham was in the Soto deal. But I think you have to get rid of Jazz. And that hurts to say, because I love Jazz. But clearly, there's too many lefties on this team. And I don't think, and I think you would agree with me, it doesn't look like they're going to sign Jazz back next offseason. I think he's going to demand too much. I think he's going to outprice himself from the Yankees' penny pitching methods. So trade Jazz and go sign Bo Bichette. I know he's been up and down. I know he's battled injuries the last 2 years, but this is a guy that has versatility. Mind you, you're still without Anthony Volpe. So realistically, you could actually sign Bo Bichette, keep Jazz Chisholm, and make a really strong infield, but you would never do that because Anthony Volpe is the Lord and Savior for this New York Yankee team, apparently. But go get Bo Bichette. He can play second. He can play short. He's telling teams that he'll play second base now, trying to get some more value there. Good right-handed hitter to have in your lineup, and I think it would make your infield significantly better because it allows Caballero, it allows Cabrera to have that versatility. I think the Yankees are going to realize McMahon was the wrong move at third base at some point during this season and move away from him, so it allows them to go there. So I think Realmuto, a.k.a. just a right-handed catcher, backup or starter, I don't care. I could use a starter at this point. Realmuto would have to be a starter, in my opinion. Second base, trade Jazz, get Bo. And when you trade Jazz, make sure that you get, outfield relief help, whatever the help is, go and get it. Obviously, Murakami at third base would be a fun thought, but they gave up too much from their standards for Ryan McMahon, so they're not going to go and get another third baseman.
I think the 3 I would make, and 2 obviously are to solidify the lineup. And again, this is in the world we don't bring back Cody Bellinger, sadly.
I thought this was in the world we brought Cody Bellinger back.
Oh, I thought we were going to dwell in the world we didn't.
Because
we can say it in the world we do, because that would be a bit better. Otherwise, yes, Kyle Tucker would be the next pick. But say they don't touch the outfield, say they do touch the outfield. Since our last episode when JT Realmuto got brought up by you, I actually have warmed on the idea a lot more. And I think him and Wells would be a really good duo. And I think it would be a strong move for the Yankees to make in a position they have seemingly just kind of abandoned in recent years and just been content with average. I think it would raise the standard certainly in that position. So I would say Real Muto, I actually am going to agree with you on. I know that's not exciting. And it's less exciting when we're recreating the 2020 pandemic Marlins, but I'm also going to say Luis Arias. And I know that's a move you don't feel great about, but and a team that struggles to hit for contact and a team that struggles to hit for average, adding Luis Arias, if you're starting to think about moving off of Jazz or whatever you're going to do in the infield, Arias is another guy who I think raises the standard of play. And even if you keep him as a backup or as a platoon piece or move him around the diamond, I hate to say it, I think that raises the entire standard when the fact is, going back to the Amed Rosario point, you could say the guy's going to play in 100 games, he's going to play in 130. You could say the guy's going to play in 80 games, he's going to play in 130. The Yankees tend to see injuries come out of left field more than any other team, and that's not just because of that position also having had injuries, but I'm just saying I think Arias would be an acquisition in that regard that could raise things. And then not to keep with the Padres, but I think you have to go back and get a piece. Sometimes I'll go to the crazy New York Jets edit that they always do. Shout out New York Jets Matt, who does this anytime a New York Jet is either available or re-signs with the team. Sometimes you need to go backwards to move forwards. And for me, that would be Michael King. I think the Yankees getting him back in the fold in some capacity would be imperative. And I think it's simply for the vibes. This team was clearly gutted when they lost him. I think it was the worst part of that Juan Soto trade. And I think getting him back, bringing in Arias, bringing in Real Muto, it's not going to probably lower me from a 9 forward to a, 4 or 5, but at least maybe a 6 or 7. And so for me, I think that would definitely put me, I'm not going to do the thing. I'm not Michael Kay. I don't think it's going to put me in a spot where I'm feeling all the warm and fuzzies heading into the season, but it's certainly 2 moves that I think could get made along with bringing one guy back that I think could help. And I agree with yours as well. The consistent theme of this episode is that as we head into the most wonderful time of the year, it's going to be a little bit more disappointing for the New York Yankees if there's no presence under the tree. And right now, Cade Winquist isn't exactly lighting the party on fire. So I like Cade Winquist. Open invite. He's welcome to come on the program. I'm going to be a Cade Winquist supporter. God, I hope we've been pronouncing his last name right this whole
Probably not. Probably not.
Justin, I'd ask what you have coming up. We both have the holidays. We both, in all likelihood, are going to have to work. I think the theme of today is just do something. It's the meme. Do something. And then you're going to have to post the Brian Cashman meme of him sleeping again. And this year, at least, he chose to embrace it. With all of that said, Justin, any final parting thoughts before we say adieu, at least for a much shorter turnaround before the next time we do this again? We'll probably be talking to you in 2026, I'd assume, but probably.
Maybe. I mean, if we have time, we'll do another one if something big happens, but not going to happen. My last
2026, if we don't talk to you to then.
Trade, if you're going to trade Jazz, maybe go get Fernando Tatis. I don't know. Last thoughts is we'll be more consistent in the new year. That goes out to our Bomber Boy fans, not Yankee fans. I don't think they'll be more consistent.
I think we will be more consistent. I think we both have eased into the post-grad life now. From Little Rock, Arkansas to Middletown, Connecticut, from coast, not really, same coast, really. From up and down the coast. We wish you a very happy holidays from Bomber Boys. Shut it. All right. I'm trying to do a nice thing. We wish you a very happy holidays. If we don't talk to you again until the new year, well, that means the Yankees are continuing to sit on their hands, but we hope 2026 brings you lots of good cheer. But if we do talk to you since then or before then, go Yanks. I don't know, wherever you are, wherever you may be. Thanks for hanging with us for another edition, first in a long time, of Bomber Boys.